Hello everyone and welcome to a really wild game from a really wild match of yesterday's clash between Magnus Carlsen and Alireza Firouzja from the finals of the Champions Chess Tour, Julius Baer Generation Cup. It's a really great game, and as it was said after the game in an interview, I'm not going to say who gave the interview, but, as the winner gave the interview, but many mistakes were made. It could have been a more precise match, but then it wouldn't be nearly as much fun. But we're going to get to that after we check out the game. And also, this is game 4 I'm about to show you. This is the decisive game, but before that I would like to briefly show you a couple of positions from game 1 and 2. So this is game 1. We're going to use the original interface where Alireza was white, and we're not going to analyze, we're just quickly going to go through the game. So it was a standard advanced variation of the Caro-Kann, bishop f5, h4, the Tal variation against the Caro-Kann, c5, captures, knight to c6, just, okay, this is all very standard stuff, nothing new here, just give you an idea of what happened and what the situation of the match was in game 4. Bishop e7, queen a4, okay, we have a couple of trades here going after the bishop, queen captures on d4, bishop f5, g4, and the g file gets opened up. Queen e3, rook to f5, castles, and rook to f8. And now Alireza has very good chances of attacking Magnus's king along the semi-open g file. He goes f3, the knight nicely, both of the knights nicely defend the pawn on f3, bishop captures, and now rook to g1. Now he has the semi-open g and h file to use for the attack. Queen e7, knight g4, and now bishop to g5, nicely aligning the queen with the king. Queen to e2, and now queen to c5, running away with the king, king to b1. Also losing a lot of advantage here, and bishop to f4, knight b3, queen to e7, and a knight to f2. We have pawn to c5, captures, and pawn to a5. We have knight captures on a5, queen to a7, and now knight to b3. And now, okay, you will start to put pressure on that a2 pawn. So rook to a8, a3, and queen to b6. Now you will start putting pressure on the knight on b3, king a2, and rook to b8. Alireza plays queen to c2 to defend the knight, and now comes bishop to e3, rook to g2, and pawn to e4. We have knight to g4, and e captures on f3. Rook g to h2, and now captures on c4. And this is now still better for Alireza, but he has to play knight to a5. However, he played knight to a1, and now Magnus's position is completely winning, and of course he finds it. Yes, Alireza is down to 2 seconds on the clock. Magnus has a minute, so that helps. He plays bishop to d4. And now, with so much pressure on this b2 pawn, Alireza can try to go passive with some like rook to b1, but then, okay, Magnus kicks away the knight, plays pawn to c3. Alireza's position would just fall apart. He tried rook to c1, but it doesn't really work. Pawn to f2, rook b1, and now queen to f1, giving up a queen temporarily, well, the extra queen, and now you will start capturing on b2. King to e7, rook to e2, and now queen captures, rook captures, bishop captures, king captures, and now Magnus has a rook versus 2 knights, but of course 3 extra pawns, and it was fairly easy endgame to win for Magnus. He just pushed that g pawn down the board. At some point Alireza had to give up a knight, and here he resigned, as it's rook and 2 pawns versus a knight and no pawns. So while Alireza was winning for the better part of the game, he blundered, and then Magnus completely took over. And this is the second game. Now Magnus is in the lead. He has the white pieces, and he opened with f3. Let's just quickly see what happened in this one. Magnus played this very interesting line against the Sicilian defense, where he put his pawn on e4 and on d3. And this is also something he does in game 4, which I think it's very interesting. Pawn to e6, a4, b6, knight f to d2, bishop b7, knight c3, knight e5. Nothing new here, all pretty standard stuff. Queen e1, so a fairly standard setup. The queen might come to the king side at some point. Knight f3, queen c7, queen g3, g6, bishop to d2, h5, h3, and pawn to h4. Queen f2, knight h5, rook f d1, bishop f6, and knight to d2, defending the pawn on b2. And now we have castles on opposite sides of the board. And again, it's a pretty Pretty nice position for both of them. e5, bishop to e7. Of course, it's a rapid game. Mistakes will be made. Sometimes the computer interface is even too rough in the assessment of the mistake. Sometimes it gives like a hard question mark when, you know, it's a very tricky move. Anything could happen. But obviously, the engine is being very objective. You know, sometimes I even get offended. I play a brilliant move, or at least I think it's brilliant, and I get 2 question marks. Yeah, that's not the best. Bishop to c2, knight b3, knight g5, and here, okay, you can see that something has to give here, and queen captures on h4. So Magnus is not afraid of giving Alireza now the semi-open g and h file to attack. Alireza captures on a4, queen f2, and this is where it gets really interesting. So one pushing on the king side, one pushing on the queen side. Knight to f6, bishop to b5, and h4. We have king to b7, h5. Magnus starts to advance that past h-pawn up the board. Bishop captures on f6, e captures, and rook to h8. g4, f captures, queen to h4, and now pawn to a4. f5, e captures, and c captures on b4. King to a6, and now bishop to f2. Rook to d7, h6, and knight to d2. And this is also where, you know, stuff really starts happening. Again, Magnus with a minute on the clock. Alireza 4 seconds on the clock. So I guess Magnus was expecting a swift victory here. But that's why we love chess. Queen f4, bishop e3, knight f3 with check. Look at this crazy position. Knight captures, queen captures, and queen to f2, offering a queen trade. Of course, Alireza declines with queen h3, queen to h2, and now he trades, as it is good for him, captures, and rook to d6. And Magnus just plays bishop to g6, g5, and defends the 2 pawns, and it seems that Magnus is just better here, but Alireza finds the brilliant rook captures on f6. And now he will grab the 2 pawns and the bishop. Bishop captures, rook captures on h6 with check, king g3, and rook captures on f6. And now, yes, Alireza is down the exchange, but he is up 3 pawns, and his position is, well, he is the one pushing for the win here. King f4, bishop d7. Magnus, of course, tries to go very active with the rook. Bishop to e6, rook to a1, king b5, rook b7 check, king to c6, and now, of course, Magnus tries to push, and he even achieves this position where, believe it or not, he's completely winning now. King to c6, and, well, just for fun, feel free to pause the video and try to find the winning idea here for Magnus. It's actually a forced mate in 4. There is no way to stop it, so have at it while I give you a couple of seconds. The move in question is not an obvious one, and you have to play rook 8 to b7. So congratulations to everyone who found that, and now mate is unstoppable. Rook b6 will be checkmate, and while you can give a few checks, that's pretty much it, like f6 check, that's it with the checks. Once you move, it's going to be rook to b6 checkmate. But now Magnus, also very low on time, below the 10-second mark, plays rook to c5 check, and Alireza can now play king to b6, but he plays king to d6, and Magnus can again repeat and go into a winning position, but he just doesn't see it. He plays rook to a6 with check, king to e7, and now Alireza escapes. We have king to g5, king to f8, king f6, and rook to h6 check, of course not allowing any rook to a8 checkmating patterns. King e5 with g3, rook a1, rook to h4, rook to g1, pawn to f4. Now Alireza pushing for the win. b5, king e7, rook c7 check. Now again a draw, bishop d7, pawn to b6, and now pawn to f6. King captures on d5, and finally f3. Magnus again completely winning if he finds rook to e1 check, but he goes pawn to b7, and now there's not much that he can do. Rook to e1, although winning, it's not all that clear why, because after king to d8 you have to play rook to a7, or, you know, some of the moves that allow you to win the game. And now let's say bishop to c8, you will play b7, and now okay, you will have to give up the bishop captures, rook captures, and the reason it's winning that after pawn to f2 there's rook a1, and now you are checkmating the black king. Even if king to c8 doesn't matter, you will just defend the rook, and the rook to a8 will be checkmate. So that was in the position. Magnus played b7, really missed a lot of stuff this game. Pawn to f2, and rook captures on g3. Rook to h5 check. We have king to e4, and now f1 queen. And Magnus is now a dead loss, but he will try to make it interesting. Rook to g7 check, king to e6, and now b8 queen, but now he is getting checkmated, and well, it's not like there's only one line that gets him checkmated. Any of the lines get him checkmated, and Alireza chooses the, well, not the cleanest one, the second cleanest. Queen d3 check, king f4, rook to f5 with check, king to g4, queen f3 check, king h4, and rook to h5 checkmate. And this is how Alireza equalizes the match after game 2. And game 3 was dead equal. It was a very long game, but equal throughout its entirety. So we're going to skip that, and we're now going into game 4 to see what happened there. And this is the one that we're going to analyze a bit more properly. So yeah, 10 minutes per player. Let's check it out. The result is even. Whoever wins this one wins the match. Magnus opens with e4, and again we have c5, and Magnus will again go for his weird French setup, d3. I say weird French because you can also get this by playing against the French. For example, e4, e6, d3, and then black for some reason goes c5, and then knight to f3. You can get it that way as well. Knight to c6, we have pawn to g3, d5, and now queen to e2. This is the, I've played this a few times. It is fun, but I think, well, I've tried playing it against the French. I don't think I ever went into it willingly against the Sicilian. I think if you're a positional player that you will enjoy it a lot. I don't know. I guess I myself prefer to meet the French head on. Knight g to e7, we have bishop to g2 and pawn to g6, pawn to h4, pawn to h6, and pawn to e5. All been played before. Bishop to g7, c3, and pawn to b5. We have bishop to f4, and now pawn to a5. And there is a game where pawn to a4 was played, but here we have knight b to d2, and it is now, as of move 11, that we have a completely new game. So okay, pawn to b4, continuing to push, a3, and now b captures on c3. B captures and pawn to a4. Alireza now ready to bring the knight over to b3 if needed, and Magnus has to decide where to put his king. Well, it's very unlikely that he will go queenside. He plays rook to b1. Might as well grab hold of the only open file on the board. Bishop to a6, nicely aligning the bishop along this diagonal. We have castles, and now knight to f5. Also an excellent square for the knight, and now rook f to c1. There are some tricky lines here where you could try maybe some g4 action, and then after knight captures on h4, knight captures some g5, but it doesn't seem to really favor black. So let's say bishop to h2, g captures on h4, and pawn to f4 looks very nice for white. Let's say castles, king to h1, you might put a rook on g1, might put two rooks on the g file, play g5, open up the g file. It would be a pretty crazy game, but Magnus prefers rook f to c1, rook to b8, and now knight to f1. We have rook to b3, either saying, okay, either we, either I keep the very strong rook here and continue piling up maybe on the b file, or you capture and give me a strong pass pawn already on b3. We have knight to e3, rook captures on a3. Magnus sacrifices the a3 pawn, knight captures on f5, g captures, and rook to a1. He will try to win back the a4 pawn now. Alireza captures on a1 and now plays pawn to c4. The real trick here is queen to d7. And you cannot capture on a4 because then you have all sorts of knight to d4 trickery. But Alireza misses it. He just plays pawn to c4, and Magnus goes to collect the pawn on a4, sidestepping the bishop here. And Alireza should really just defend with bishop to b5. But he goes queen to b6, and now queen captures on a4. Magnus is now just, winning because the bishop is hanging. You don't have time to capture here. So bishop to b5, and now queen to a3, stopping the black king from escaping via castles. Bishop f8 attacks the queen, queen to a8 with check, and king to d7. Well, it's not, weird to have a king on d7 when playing the French. In this position, it does feel a bit out of place. D captures on c4. We have bishop captures on c4 and knight to d2, putting pressure on the bishop to d3, and pawn to c4. Magnus doesn't care about pawns here. He just wants to open up the path towards the black king. And indeed, if you capture here, let's say, okay, you don't do that. You play bishop captures on c6, and if queen captures, rook a7, and it's game over. You resign here. So after c4, bishop to g7, and now queen to a4. pinning the knight. We have queen to d4, now pinning the pawn, sort of, and rook to d1. We have bishop to e2, and now rook back to b1. We have rook to c8, finally getting that rook into the game, and queen to a3. The real trick here is, although very hard to see with a few seconds on the clock, is bishop to e3. Look at this very cool move. Bishop, queen captures on e5. Now you capture on d5, and after e captures, now you go knight to b3. With access to c5, you'll play put the rook on c1. Maybe you put a rook on e1, but the king, it will be very hard for the king to survive there. But yeah, few seconds on the clock. Queen to a3 was played, bishop to f8, and now queen to a6. We have bishop to c5. Bishop captures on c4, and it's still a draw. But after bishop to c5, Alireza decided to bite more than he can chew. And Magnus plays c captures on d5. Bishop e3 again is an instant win for Magnus, but it just looks weird after bishop captures on c4. Both queens now hanging, and after queen b7 check, rook c7, bishop captures on d4, rook captures on b7, rook captures on b7 with check, king c8, bishop captures on c5, king captures on b7, and now you go after the pawn. And well, the fact that you will have a passed h1 will win you the game. Even if h5, bishop f3, you're still going to win it and win the game. So yeah, I mean, a few seconds on the clock. Of course, no one is expecting to see that. C captures on d5 was played, and now Alireza is completely winning, and he finds it. Queen captures on f2 check, king to h2, and now, believe it or not, Alireza is completely winning here. And yes, he was very low on clock, but you guys are not, I hope. So feel free to pause the video and win the game for Alireza while I give you a couple of seconds. This was probably one of the easiest pause the video moments I've ever created, but you can imagine the tension in the match when Alireza misses this. There's a free queen hanging on a6. Bishop captures on a6, and it's game over. There's nothing there. I mean, you even guard the b7 square, so Magnus doesn't even have a rook left. If you capture the pawn, you can even give up the rook. It doesn't matter. There is nothing here for Magnus. But Alireza, for some reason, well, not for some, he was very, very long on time. He played e captures on d5, and now it is Magnus again who is winning. He played queen to b7 with check, king to d8, and now queen captures on f7, and now there's just no way to save the black king. We have bishop to e7, now comes queen captures on d5 with check, king to e8, and now queen to g8 with check, bishop to f8, and now queen to g6 with check, king to d8, and queen to f6 with check, king to e8, and now rook to b7, and here you really have nothing more to try. Knight e7 was played, e6 by Magnus, and he was in this position on move 43 that Alireza Firouzja resigned the game, and with it the final match of the Champions Chess Tour Julius Baer challenge. So yeah, here you resign because whatever you play, and there really isn't all that much you can. Let's say play bishop a6 is just a very quick checkmate. Queen f7 checking, d8, and queen captures on f8 will be checkmate, or any other move that you try also will end in checkmate. So as you can see, there was a lot of mistakes being made here on both sides, and I could, well, talk a little bit more about that, but I could also just let you hear what Magnus had to say about this. And it's a very short clip where he talks a little bit about Arjun, about Gukesh, about Alireza, and the young players coming up. So let's hear it from the man himself.
I think in faster formats, it's only Alireza who's remotely close. I mean, and it's not necessarily on a day like today. Like today, none of us were particularly good, and a lot of people could have probably had a good chance. But overall, you know, here I don't think. Yeah, they are, and in classical, yes. I mean. It remains to be seen if Arjun is quite 2800 strength yet, but Gukesh is really, really good. And I think he's by far the best among the. All
right.
Among the kids in classical, apart from Alireza, of course, but like the even younger kids.
Okay. There's one.
So yeah, I mean, it's not that Magnus is objectively unbeatable, but it seems that whatever he does, he still wins tournament. It doesn't matter how many mistakes he makes. If he leaves his queen hanging on h6 for no reason, he just wins tournaments. And until youngsters can overcome that, and just feel that they can actually beat him, he will continue his onslaught and just win every tournament that he plays in. So yeah, it is up to Alireza, it is up to Gukesh, it is up to Arjun and the other youngsters to just realize that there is no spoon. That's pretty much it. So yeah, that's the game. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Sorry for a bit of a longer video, but yeah, I had to explain what happened in the entire match before showing you this game. Otherwise you just feel maybe okay, they're just blundering pieces, but it was very intense. I would like to thank Grandmaster Uncle Moves Only, Ranko Djogashovic, Nishan Ravi, GroznyChessFestival.org.gg, and Miguel Faber for a contribution to my channel. Thank you a lot, I really appreciate it. As usual, you can check 2 of my previous videos here. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you soon, continuing to check up on your wonderful suggestions and whatever else happens in the chess world. Thank you all, I will see you soon, and have an excellent rest of your day.